When it comes to fatigue, it is generally known that it is content specific. So what is fatigue? Fatigue is both a physical and mental state where an individual will feel tired and unable to continue in an exhausting exercise. This can cause pain, deeper and faster breathing, as well as a higher heart rate. In extreme cases, people might have fatigue due to anemia, diabetes, or even heart disease. There are also three types of fatigue: local, general, and chronic. Local fatigue is localized within the muscles caused by repeated contraction of that specific muscle without time for recovery. An example of this would be fatigue of the bicep after bicep curls due to the isolated contraction without rest. General fatigue is the type that you would feel after a match of football or training, where you feel physically or psychologically weak. The last type of fatigue is chronic. Chronic fatigue is caused by a weakened immune system, which could be caused by excessive overtraining or inadequate recovery. For maximum intensity and low duration, I chose javelin. This is because it is a maximal intensity due to it being recorded through distance and the furthest distance you can do, and low duration due to one forceful action. First 3 seconds that is performed, ATP is expended. This would be the run-up. If this is stored locally in the muscles, which fuels the run-up, and the PC, the phosphocreatine, which is worth about 7 seconds, is then used. The phosphocreatine, stored also in the liver, is then used for the maximal force output for the throw. For an extra boost of energy, people may use supplements such as creatine. Creatine supplements are very popular with bodybuilders due to the fact that it enhances the output of muscle mass. But for javelin, it would give bursts of energy and assist recovery of the muscles, particularly useful in a competition environment where multiple throws will be recorded. For moderate exercise intensity and duration, I chose the 400-meter run. The RER, or respiratory exchange ratio, shows how much energy is used and what is coming from either carbs or carbohydrates or fat. A 0.7 RER score would mean that only fat is being broken down to create energy, and an RER of 1 would be 100% carbohydrates. In this exercise of the 400 meters, ATP, PC, glycogen, and glucose will be depleted for consumption. As the race may border where the aerobic system takes over, the lactic acid will have built up quite substantially, and at the end of the race, this will cause major discomfort and sometimes pain due to a higher acidity or lower pH level, percentage of hydrogen. Acidosis will also occur due to a higher level of hydrogen ions. The OBLA graph, also shown on this slide, is where the lactic acid becomes fatiguing, which is around 4 millimoles of lactate. One way that people may try to delay their OBLA, other than training, may be glucose ingestion. This is usually in the form of an energy gel. Energy gel is a quick ingested way of getting energy back into the systems, as this restocks the glycogen and glucose in the body ready for the lactic acid system to resynthesize ATP. The next sport that I used was a marathon or a 10k run, a long distance run. This is submaximal, and as this is submaximal, steady state exercise can be achieved. The muscle fibers used are slow oxidative, and this causes a low contraction force. The RER of this sporting example usually starts around initially uses carbohydrates until they're depleted, where fat is then used instead. The waste products of this exercise are water, carbon dioxide, and heat. This is because the exercise is predominantly aerobic. One way that some people would delay fatigue is carbo loading, where they reduce the carbohydrates about a week before the competition or a race. They will lower the amount of carbohydrates that they will take on in their diet, and this is pretty rapid over 1 or 2 days, and then gradually they'll increase the amount of carbohydrates that they take on, which will increase the stores over time, and then by the day before the race, the stores will be higher than they naturally are. This then means that there are higher stores in the body to use for energy. For recovery of the maximum intensity and short duration, the anaerobic lactic energy system is used, as it is around 10 seconds of exercise. The ATP-PC is used, and there is a ratio of 1 to 10 to 12 seconds of work to recovery, where 1 second of work would take 10 seconds of recovery to resynthesize this energy expended. And on the epoch graph, the excess post-exercise oxygen consumption on moderate exercise there would usually be a plateau, but as this is maximal there is no plateau and a higher O2 deficit. And as it is maximal, there is a longer epoch or O2 det where the oxygen will be required to bring the body's state back to normal after exercise. This includes the myoglobin and hemoglobin both being replenished by the O2. For moderate intensity and moderate duration, the work is aerobic, and so there is a small O2 deficit at the start, but overall the recovery will take a few hours due to the lactic acid still being in the system. As it is able to plateau, there is a lower oxygen det and deficit, and the lactic acid that is built up is split into multiple different things. They are pyruvate, which is 60% of the lactate, glucose 5%, glycogen, which is 20%, and protein, which is 10%. For that 5% that glucose is created from lactate, gluconeogenesis is used, which results in the creation of glucose from the lactate that is as a waste product from this exercise. Another result from this exercise could be DOMS, which stands for the delayed onset of muscle soreness, which is pain in the muscles the next day or even the day afterwards after the exercise, where the myofibers of the muscle are damaged and they have to repair. It is usually characterized by stiffness and tenderness of the muscles. For submaximal intensity, the marathon or 10k run, the recovery can take up to days to fully recover due to the aerobic exercise. There is also dehydration due to water being a waste product of this aerobic exercise. The body will need glucose, protein, water, and oxygen to recover. With intermittent activities, these are sports or exercises that use a mix of intensities, like football or rugby. A shot within a football match would use the ATP in the muscles, but an increased duration and a lower intensity would use the lactic acid system. Overall, throughout the game of 90 minutes in a football match, the running throughout the whole match would class as aerobic, and recovery can be days due to this aerobic aspect, requiring oxygen, glucose, protein, and water to completely recover. With neuromuscular fatigue, It can cause a depletion of cholinesterase, ACH or acetylcholine, and lowered amounts of calcium, which makes the neuromuscular transition slower and therefore sliding filament theory slower and less effective.